Ever wondered how to achieve that moody black look that you see a lot in photography today, especially on the social media side? It's that tone of like saturating out so many of the colors, yet making it look sharp and pop, and somehow have some cool color grading going on over the top of them. Today, let's have a look at how we can achieve that, but also we're gonna, instead of just pushing down a full black tone, we're gonna look at how we can put some color grading of blues in there as well, just to give this kind of cool, moody black vibe that you see here in these types of photos. Now, I personally love this type of style because if you haven't noticed looking around, I like the color black, if we can call black a color, or more the absence of color. Either way, I like the black kind of style, and I really like it compositionally because when you start sucking out other colors, you really put a focus in on one color in particular, and that really helps to achieve a nice sort of balance in your photo too. So let's get into it. Today we're going to take this photo, and this is one from Signature Edits. The link is in the description there. Feel free to download and follow along if you want to. But if we just compare the two, we can see that things are a lot crisper. We have a lot more highlights going on. Particularly, we want to bring out the waterfall and darken down the rocks that are going on around it. We have a subject as well, and we need to make sure that because that subject has skin tones, we need to leave some of the oranges, yellows, and anything that's related to skin tones there actually intact. And that makes up a big part of this preset. But then you can also see over the top, we have a lovely color grade. And as I come down and just remove only the color grade section, you'll see the difference that the color grade actually makes to this overall thing. So if this is of interest, stick around and let's look at how we can build this preset. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit the reset button, and let's start from the beginning. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go into the basic edit panel. We're just going to sort out some of the exposure side. Now, we mentioned this is going to be quite a contrasty preset, so we want to edit this in a way that we start to bring out some of that contrast. Like a lot of my editing workflow, I tend to avoid using that contrast slider, and I'll get my contrast out of the curves and out of this basic panel. I then tend to use that slider as I move this preset from photo to photo, just to tweak it slightly. So in the initial one, I'm first of all just going to suck out all of the highlights. Even though we're going to look to bring in more highlights, I just want to see if there's any detail that we can scamper back in the sky, but it doesn't look like there's much there. And then next, I'm just going to raise my shadows, again quite high up, and it's just to get that nice flat starting image. The whites and black, then I'm going to pull my whites down, and I'm also going to pull my blacks down slightly as well. And I may come back to this later on as I add more contrast in. Now, depending on the type of shot you've got, you can either raise the clarity or reduce it. Because there's not really many like leaves or foliage going on here, I'm going to increase my clarity because I want a nice crisp shot and I want some more details present here. So I'm going to raise my clarity slightly, and I'm also going to raise the dehaze. Now, dehaze slider has a big impact sort of later on, so I might come back to this at the end and see how raising that up and down can really change this whole preset. And then I'll come back to my vibrance and saturations once I've done some curves editing. So looking at the before and after, we've really just flattened out this image, brightened up the shadows, reduced the highlights, just brought everything down into a bit more of a flat stand in here. So now let's go into our curves and start to see if we can add some contrast and perhaps a little bit of color as well. So I'm going to start with the S shape then. And the first thing we're going to do is just try to crisp up what's going on down in the shadows area. And I'm going to lift these as well. And if you lift these, you'll get more of that matte sort of black finish. If you want more of a pure kind of black tone preset, keep them down where they are. So as I add this other point in here, just to really control the very bottom parts. And then up top, I'm just going to boost my highlights slightly. And I'm going to bring this down as well. So now I'm just going to go through all of the colors, and I'm going to add in basically an S curve that's similar across each channel, and that's going to allow me to boost the contrast and just introduce a little bit more color across each channel as well. Very, very fine balance this, and it always looks terrible until you've finished, but this might be the area you spend the most amount of time on. So now that I've added all of that in and I've just gone back and tweaked it slightly on there, you can see that this looks very strange, like it's very yellow toned, but we've got a lot of that contrast in that we wanted. So next up, I'm now going to go down into my HSL sliders, and I'm going to look at sucking out colors that I don't want. But first of all, I just want to see if I can tweak the hues of them whilst I can see them in the image, and then I'm going to go ahead and start to suck them out. So first of all, the green one, I'm actually going to pull 100% all the way over to the side here. I'm mostly going to be focused on keeping the warm colors, so the reds, oranges, and yellows here, and all of the others pretty much sucking out. So if I can just consolidate these, they're going to look a little bit more natural when I suck them all out and I play around with the lumens. So let's just push the magenta slightly there. And then with these warms, I'm just going to push that yellows towards the oranges and the oranges down, push everything really into that red spectrum a little bit more. It's at this point then I'm actually going to come back up top here and I'm going to tweak the calibration just to see if I can pull these colors together even further. So I'm going to add around the 30 mark up on the reds, boost the greens to match, and the blues as well. And I'm starting to get towards that cooler looking colors, which I really like. So let's just toggle that on and off. You can see I'm just really getting rid of that yellow tone, pulling everything down more towards that blue, because eventually we're going to want that blue in the final image, just as like an undertone. A lot of it's going to come from the color grading, but it's good for us to have it here in the HSL and the calibrations as well. So now that I've done that, I can go back down here and I can look to start sucking out the colors that I don't want. So we've already said green is one we definitely don't want. So I'm going to remove all the greens and see what a big difference that does already. And I'm going to come down, I'm going to currently for the moment take away all the blues, purples and the magentas, and that just really leaves us with these 3 channels. But there's still a lot of color going on in here, so I'm actually going to pull all of these down as well. And the moment I do that with the yellow channel, you can see that the yellow channel has been really dominating this piece here. So I'm going to pull down the yellows, but not all the way, because remembering that as skin tones sit within this as well. Okay, so that gives us a really nice image that we've got here. But now that I've introduced all the color bits, it's starting to look a little bit dark. So before I go up and do it just with the exposure, I'm going to boost the luminance of some of these channels and see what I can do here. So that's starting to look good, but now I still feel there's too much color in this here. So I'm going to go ahead and just saturate out some of the color, and I'm also going to boost the exposure a bit as well. I also feel like we could raise the blacks a little bit more here and just pull them down and basically tweak the contrast overall. But that is starting to get towards where we want it. Now it still feels like there may be a little bit too much blue in there, but we're going to put our color grading over the top and do some final tweaks with this. Now the color grading is really where this is all going to come together, and you can tweak the color grading over this depending on the image you want. We could choose not to put as much blues in with the curves, which is where a lot of this color is coming from at the minute. If I go back up to the curves here and I toggle that off, you can see actually how much saturation we have added into the colors by adding across all those different channels. You know, releasing that, you can see there's a lot of colors. So if you prefer to have less blue, more of that flat like black tone, don't go across all the channels and just stick with the curve on the first one instead. But as you come into these channels, you can then move these points up and down and introduce more blues, more yellows, whatever you would like there. So for the color grading, I'm going to first of all bring in the highlights here, some of these blues. So I'm just going to pull some saturation up onto these and go quite aggressive, probably around the 30 sort of mark. And I actually like that blue that it's adding in there. Perfect. Let's toggle on and off, and you can see that's just taken away what's left over from those HSL sliders and the calibration, and it's just applying that nice blue tone across the whole image. I'm going to pull it slightly up to that. Then in the shadows, I could do a similar thing, so I can bring some more blues in, and I could push this around into the aquas, and you can see as you rotate around here, you get a slightly different look going on over the top of them. Or I can come round into the yellows, the warmer tones here, and you can see that actually we now get a really nice saturated sort of look. So there's 2 ways to go about with this. You could go a full blue over the top of this, or we can pull it all the way around here, add a bit of yellow in, and you can see that just sucks out even more of the color here. I quite like this one, and that's what we're going for on this image. So I'm going to just find the right hue that I like, and then just have a look at the saturation side. I don't want this as aggressive as I did my highlights. I want this really just to add to the image there. And as far as blending goes, we're just going to pull that up to 100. Now, if you're not sure what all of these kind of sliders mean, you know, what happens when we blend, what is actually going on with the image here, I'm going to be releasing very, very soon a workshop that goes through all of these bits on the panel, less about how to put together presets and more about when you'd want to make these types of choices. So as I've gone through this video here, you can see I know what choices to sort of make with it, but that's because I understand as I put color grading on, what's happening to the colors in my image. It's really good to know the theory, the ins and outs of what's happening with all of these sliders, because it just helps you you make better editing choices and removes all that stress of going through. You've seen as I've gone through this preset, the stuff that's not looked good until the entire workflow comes together. So it's been able to understand that what preparation work do you need to do in some of these sections because of what's coming up later. If that's interesting to you, comment below or go through onto my website and you can sign up there and show me that you're interested. So let's just toggle on and off the color grading. Now you can see that's made it really nice and we've got that cool black finish. So there's three real big parts to this here. There is the color grading side and there is the curve side. The curve side is really bringing in all of those colors, giving you a lot of contrast, really crisping up this image, but it also brings in a lot of saturation. You can pull out most of those colors in the HSL sliders here. You can see I've come down on this. Because I've got somebody in my photo, I'm just going to raise a little bit of the purples and magentas. And then also you can see that the color grading makes a big difference. Just because you've sucked out all of these colors, do not disregard your luminance. Your luminance makes a big difference. Even though the color is not there, the channel is still present. So if I pull the orange up and down, you'll see the face goes up and down in brightness as well. So even though we've saturated stuff out, it makes a massive difference. And that's a really cool way where you can play around with the different sort of grays to blacks that you've got present in the image here by making them brighter or not. So normally I'd go back up and I'd make loads of tweaks, but because we're short on time today, let's just add some final things in, which is we're going to put in a bit of sharpening and just a little bit of masking here as well, holding down Option on our keyboard when you're going on the masking bit. And of course, because it's that Moody one, we're going to put in the vignette as well. So I'm just going to put quite aggressive, lower my midpoint and raise my feathering. And it's already kind of done it down here, but with the highlights, you can see this one here, we've got quite a bright sky going on. So it kind of clips the corner and just doesn't look right and doesn't look natural. By pulling our highlights one up, we're actually saying to remove this effect anytime you've got some bright spaces such as this sky. So whilst it's affecting the rest of the image, it's now removed it from those corners there. Now you can go as aggressive as you want on this. I tend to go aggressive on this preset because again, I want to blacken out everything around my subject and draw the eye in. I would then go in and do some additional masking, such as select the subject and just raise the exposures and the shadows on them, and maybe the clarity as well, just so we get that crisper sort of look. And then I would do some further ones as well, where I would come down from the top here and just accent out that this is going to be a bright sky, so I'm going to brighten that area up, and then maybe add a bit of, or take away a bit of dehaze, just to get that mist sticking out from the top there. Very, very simple, quick masks, but you can see it already makes a big difference. Now that you've got the preset in place, I mentioned if you come back up here, depending on some of your choices, you can tweak this in different ways. So raising the blacks, take away a bit of that crispness to it, but it will also brighten your image up slightly there. Same with the dehaze. If I add more dehaze in, I get that bit more of a mist atmosphere effect. If I put it the other way here, then you can see it gets even darker. Clarity as well, I can increase my clarity, just the crispness of the image, or I could also use the texture. I could add more vibrancy in, I could take vibrancy down. There's loads and loads of different ways to manipulate this preset, which is why I love this style. So I hope you found that one useful. Please let me know in the comments below, what sort of styles do you want to see next? What sort of edits are you struggling with? Remember to like, subscribe, all the usual, and I'll see you in the next one.